Hi everybody, I miss you guys, but I wanted to keep reading Her Own 2 Feet. So 4th and 5th grade, we've been reading this. So I'm going to read right now for Mrs. Hunter, Miss Simone's, Mrs. Swicky, and Miss Holsteggy's class, because you guys are all on the same page, okay? So we left off with now she's getting ready to go to America, okay? The next evening at the airport, she clung to Mama and Papa, crying. The translator, Anna, was waiting with her son, Danny, who was in a stroller. "We must go," said Anna. "I'm sorry, but we have to leave now or we'll be late for our flight." Papa let go first, then Mama. "We love you," they called. Rebecca tried to stop crying so she could say goodbye, but she was so full of sadness. No words spilled out, just tears. As she went through the security line and lost sight of her parents, she felt as if her heart were splintering like a piece of chalk dropped on a concrete floor. She tried to ignore all the stares of strangers while she walked beside Anna on the tops of her feet. She looked through the big windows of the terminal and saw the silver airplane that would lift her high above the earth and carry her across the ocean. Fear replaced sadness. Silence replaced tears. When it was time to board, she followed Anna outside. A set of stairs had been rolled into place in front of the door to the airplane. A stranger, someone dressed in an airport uniform, carried her up the stairs and put her down in the airplane. Anna walked along the aisle and stopped at a middle row. "This is our spot," she said. Rebecca sat in a big, smooth seat and carefully watched how to buckle her seatbelt. The tiny oval windows were too far away to see much when they took off, but that was okay with Rebecca. She closed her eyes tight and prayed they wouldn't crash as the plane picked up speed. Her stomach dropped when they rose into the air. Her ears hurt. Danny started to cry. "Rebecca," said Anna, shaking her arm. Rebecca opened her eyes. "Try to yawn. It will help your ears." Rebecca opened her mouth wide, waiting for the yawn, which made Danny laugh. The yawn came, filling her chest and popping her ears, and then she felt a little better. She studied all the people sitting around them and wondered where they were going. When the food came, Anna helped her put her tray down since she couldn't lift her arms. She looked at the food but couldn't eat because she didn't have room to bend all the way to her tray, and she couldn't lift her food to her mouth. She looked at Anna, who was busy trying to keep Danny from throwing Anna's food and drink all over the plane. "I'm sorry, Rebecca," Anna said. Then she leaned over in her seat and asked the stranger on Rebecca's left something in English. The woman nodded and smiled at Rebecca, then picked up a fork and put a small bite of potato on it and held it to Rebecca's lips. She took a bite, but shook her head when the woman held up another. She didn't like being fed like a baby, and she wasn't very hungry anyway. Eventually, she slept. By the time she woke up, she wasn't afraid of flying anymore. If they hadn't crashed yet, it was probably okay. And the airplane was so fancy. There were tiny TV screens on the backs of the seats that showed movies. Anna helped her put small pieces of plastic in her ears, and then she could hear the voices and the music. She didn't understand what they were saying since it was in English, but it was still wonderful. And there was a toilet on the plane and a sink that turned on and off with the press of a button. A woman brought her soda with a straw so she didn't have to lift her cup to take a sip. When Anna said she had had enough, there was still clean water whenever she asked for it, and a fresh new cup each time. How Mama would have loved that fresh water. Simple as asking, instead of walking miles to the well to fill her yellow jug. They changed planes and flew again, then changed to yet another plane and flew even farther. She woke and slept until the only way to tell if it was day or night was to look out the window to see if the sun was up. As she buckled her seatbelt for the last flight of their 30-hour journey, she tried to swallow the lump of fear that had lodged in her throat again, big as the pit of a mango. What would happen to her when she got to America? Would the Davis family leave her alone in the hospital like her parents did in the clinic? Would the doctors be able to help her? Would it hurt? She was so far from her family and her friends, her house and her lake that shone in the afternoon sun. She was far from her concrete floor, dusted with chalk letters, and her snowflakes that hung from the ceiling, each one different. She wished she could close her eyes and sleep again. But sleep was so far away as her home and her school and her family and everything she loved. "You're so quiet," said Anna, as she helped Rebecca pull the seat belt tight. A long, loose canvas tail hung off the edge of her seat. "Are you nervous? Excited?" Rebecca shook her head but didn't speak. She didn't know how to put her feelings into words. She was both of these things. More than anything, she felt alone, even with Anna and Danny by her side, and she felt sick for her home. "Is it night in Rwanda, Medea? Is it night here? It's night here up in the sky. There is a man sleeping across the aisle with his mouth wide open. Baby Danny is sleeping on Anna's lap, and Anna is asleep too. Am I the only one awake in the whole wide world?" When the wheels of the plane touched down with a squeal and a jerk in Austin, Texas, it was 3 in the morning and dark outside. Anna rubbed her eyes and yawned and gathered all of their things. Danny was wide awake and laughing. They waited until everyone else was off, and then Rebecca walked down the aisle on the tops of her feet, rocking side to side. Her arms brushed the smooth seats, so blue and perfect. The fizzy soda she sipped earlier bubbled in her belly. Her gut twisted with worry, and her brain felt foggy from so many hours in the air between worlds. They didn't have to walk any stairs when they left the plane. Instead, they walked down a long tunnel. At the end, an airport employee was waiting for them with a wheelchair. "I know you can walk, but I think a wheelchair might be faster," said Anna. "We need to find the Davises and get to bed." A wheelchair was fine with Rebecca. She was tired. The woman rolled Rebecca through the quiet airport, following behind Anna, who was pushing Danny's stroller. All the shops were closed, and there were almost no people except the ones who had got off their plane. Everything looked clean and shiny and new, not a bit of trash on the ground. She rubbed the lines on her black corduroy pants. They were soft from years of wear, passed down and down until they ended up in the second-hand store in her village. They did a good job of hiding her legs. She tucked her hands in and out of the long sleeves of her jacket, trying to decide which looked more strange, no hands or her hands, calloused on the backs with her middle fingers resting on her palms. It didn't matter, really. She was in a wheelchair. She couldn't speak English. Her head was shaved, and her curled feet were fully visible in her sandals, poking out from the bottoms of her pants. She was going to seem strange to these Americans no matter what. They stopped at the elevator. "We'll meet you at the bottom," said Anna. "I'll take Danny on the escalator." The woman pushing the wheelchair said something in English that Rebecca couldn't understand. When the elevator doors opened, they went inside, and the woman pushed the button with the number 1 on it. As they went down, Rebecca felt her stomach drop the way it had in the airplane. At the bottom, the elevator dinged and the doors opened, but she didn't see the same thing she had seen when they went in. There was a group of people standing there, smiling and waving. They all had white skin. Where was Anna? Rebecca ducked her head and stared at the shiny white floor, flecked with bits of black and gray, as she was wheeled into the middle of the huddle of strangers. "Rebecca, we're excited you're here." Alrighty, you guys, we're going to stop there, and we'll pick up the next time. See ya.